Awesome. Welcome back, guys. That was a quick
last.
one. We are, we're very quick with our breaks. We like to come back as fast as possible. So thank you for sticking around. You have now made it to the deep dive section of the show. And as good as the saying goes, all good things must come to an end. This week is our season 1 finale. And boy, it's been a great first season for Geek Life. Every season of a show has its highs and its lows. We've had some technical difficulties, life events, and pandemic to deal with throughout this whole first season. Some episodes have reached hundreds, others just my mom. But tonight we wanted to, talk about finales, the big finishes, the money shots, if you will. We wanted to dive deep into what makes a good one, what makes a bad one, who crushed it on their way out, and who killed their brand while they were trying to just say goodbye. Kev, we'll start with you tonight. What's the difference between a season finale and a series finale? Just so the folks at home don't think that this is the last episode of Geek Life.
Yeah, so season finale basically means that you're taking a break. It's the end of a chapter. Think of it as a book. And then the series finale is the end of that book. And this is the end of chapter 1 for Geek Life. So, yeah, we'll be back soon.
100%. Yeah, no, it's always, it's always great to make that distinction. I didn't want the people at home to think that the show was over. We're just going to be taking a little break. We'll be right back. But, it's almost been a complete year since we started this thing. And I think like most shows, we've grown a lot, right? I think that's the telltale sign of a good show is to grow throughout it, right? And so, Braun, what do you think makes a good season finale?
Season finale or series finale? So season finale. Okay. Season finale. Well, I think that there should be with a season finale, a resolution, but also kind of like a cliffhanger, like a little bit of both. So you want to feel a little bit resolved, but you also want to be excited for what's going to happen in the next season. As I think that is the main thing that I'm looking for is that like, ooh, what's going to happen next? So that if you are like binging it on Netflix and there's like tons of seasons afterwards, so you're going to be like, okay, I got this. Let's go right back in for the next. It's kind of what I'm looking for.
No, 100%. It's something that kind of like it resolves something big from that season, right? Where you're just like, hell yeah, that was good shit. But then doesn't resolve the entire thing so that you're not, complete. You're still hungry. You still want more, right? Mm-hmm. So Kev, what do you think? What makes a banger season finale?
No, I agree with what Brian said that, I think there has to be a resolution, right? You have to have some sort of closure to what you have been watching all season, and then like some sort of cliffhanger, something that draws you back, something that leaves you wanting more. And like, I have to wait 3 months so I can start watching the show again to do it all over again. So I think having that balance or those two elements completed is what's critical for it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And Braun, what do you think makes a good series finale? The big finish.
Yeah, for the series finale, I feel like you want more of that sense of resolution and less of that cliffhanger. I mean, maybe there's some sort of ambiguous endings that are still really satisfying, but I do think that you kind of crave that more of that resolving it, because there's nothing worse than a show that gets kind of like canceled before they have the chance to actually create that episode. And then you're always left really wanting too much more because they didn't end it thinking that they were ending it. So it's always really obvious, I feel like. And so you want a deeper sense of resolution.
No, 100%. What about you, Kev? What do you feel makes a good series finale?
I think it's got to, it just has to make sense first off, but we'll go into that later. I think it has to stay true to the brand of the show or the message and identity of the show, right? Like too many times you'll watch a series finale and you're like, what the fuck was that? And I think that happens a lot of time because either A, the writers get switched out or whatever, and B, the show's gone on entirely too long, i.e. X-Files, i.e. whatever. Or the show ends sweetly, perfectly, chef's kiss, like The Good Place, right? Like where you feel a sense of peace after it, right? Where it's like, this is goodbye and I'm okay with it.
Well, that's the big thing, I think, in a series finale especially, is that there's something almost like cathartic about it. There's got to be, as human beings, we like closure. in things.
Yeah.
That's the
Right.
reason why we even host funerals and we do stuff
Yeah.
like that, is because we need to say goodbye to things, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's one of those where, like, a show, especially one that we watch over seasons, which is
Yeah.
essentially over years, we grow as people as the show grows. You start to feel
Right.
really close to characters. And I think that's a reason why The Office and some of those or whatever can crush you with a season
Yeah.
finale and make
Right.
you cry, and make you
Right.
laugh
Well,
and everything, because you really get connected to them, and that's the whole, like, telltale of a great kind of finale, is that it's almost like a happy funeral.
yeah. Well, my girlfriend Angelica says it like she calls them her friends, right? Like whenever her shows like that she watches or whatever, like they are, you grow a relationship or attachment to these characters, and I think when it's time to end things, or where things ends, you want like, I know when I have a good series finale, or when I watch a good series finale, when I don't want to watch anything else after that for like the entire day for a long time, because my palate has been cleansed. I don't want to ruin that last memory I had of something that was good with with another distraction or something.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
And so, some shows crush it. Others destroy their whole brand on a season finale or series finale. We've talked about shows in the past like Lost, Dexter, Game of Thrones that really dropped the ball when it come to wrapping things up with a bow. But Bron, what do you think makes for a good season finale? And I know you kind of went into that earlier. So what are some examples of some of your favorite endings, I guess?
Well, I think we'll get into a little bit more of these as we go on deeper in like the top 10. But just to name a few shows, I think that Battlestar Galactica did it really well with their series finale, with kind of like making you feel that sense of like, oh, this is what the show is building up to, and you really feel resolved and you're like excited sort of for the future. I also think that this is interesting too, because like a show like Arrested Development, when it initially ended, I felt really satisfied with that finale of the series, but then they rebooted it for Netflix. So it was like, oh, that wasn't the end. But I feel like that point that it was the end really felt like this is like it wrapped up really neatly in the show. And then they decided to like reboot it. So I think that's kind of when a show kind of comes back to life. Also, I think that shows that have like really cute endings, like Parks and Rec, I feel like you really feel at the end of that show like all of your friends within the show, all of the people that you like invested in, you're like, oh wow, like this is where they are now, and I'm really happy with that. So you really just feel for all the characters, and you really are like leaving them in a good spot, kind of like feeling like the characters that you care about are in a good place. And maybe that is part of what makes the series finales good, is like, are these characters that I'm invested in, what's happening for them right now? And am I happy about that, or am I not? So that can be part of what makes that a good series finale. But what about you, Kev? What do you think? Some of your examples.
Yeah, my example, well, I said The Good Place. I think that's a good one. Honestly, and this is, I might get some hate for this, but Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I was, not to spoil anything, but it's been over a year now. But the way they went out, I thought was appropriate. It was kind of like a send off. It was like one of these reunions where like flash forwards like a few years after the big event happened, and they're all catching up, and then they all part ways to go on with their lives, that sort of thing. And then, those are the two examples that come to mind. I just have too many examples of shows that gone on too long and just ended poorly. Or shows that got canceled. So, but like I said, it's hard to end the show. It's very hard to end the show, and I think that's why so many get it wrong. And again, creative kind of gets stifled by executives in some of these scenarios, where it's rushed, or even the entire show, that entire season doesn't make sense for some stupid executive decisions. But yeah, I think those two are the most. I'm sure I'm definitely forgetting like a fuck ton, but those are just the two most recent ones. I think this because of the two most recent series finales that I've experienced. So.
I know it's always about the relevancy, right? Like when's the last time I watched it? And so like I think about that a lot. But I think it's funny that you brought up Parks and Rec. I think Amy Poehler and Tina Fey just crush it with ending shows. So Parks and Rec was phenomenal. Then you've got 30 Rock. I don't know if you guys ever watched it all the way through. it's one of those shows where you can pick up any episode and watch it, right? But if you watch it all the way through and you get really connected with the characters, that season finale of 30 Rock is phenomenal. It's one of the greatest, season finales out there. And so series finales, I mean. And so they just really wrapped it up very well. But it's interesting, Bron, you brought up another thing that I thought about was, things ending happily. Because I think one of the best finales ever is got to be Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad did a great job closing out that show, but it was not a happy ending. And so it's one of those where, like, even though it was kind of like almost, the protagonist that you followed throughout this whole thing didn't change his ways. He didn't, I don't think Walter White ever became a better person, right? And so it's one of those things where, like, he kind of finally got what almost he deserved. And in that way, we felt closure. And I've always thought that was the interesting thing about Breaking Bad is that there was no kind of like hero's story where Walter White, there was in the way that he comes and saves Jesse. Sorry for any spoilers. But, it's I guess there was a little bit of a redemption there. Yeah. But it wasn't like they didn't try to make him into a brand new kind of man, a new hero, right? He still died a drug dealer.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air had a pretty banger series finale. It's a classic.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah.
Cheers ends very similarly with the turning out the lights. Yeah. I think that's an iconic way to end the show is to just like, flip out the light. And then you got to look around. You got to do that look around, Ted Danson did the same thing. Yeah, Will Smith.
Anytime I leave a place for either a really long time or indefinitely, like I'm just I take it around and I flick the light off and I just leave.
100%.
Yeah.
And so, are there any shows that you guys, speaking of Fresh Prince, I think that's a good one. Are there any shows that you think got better with time where the ending actually made it worth kind of like going back and rewatching? Because now that you know the full story, it's almost like, shit, there could have been things I missed. Let me go back and look at it. Kev, what do you think? Are there any shows that got better with time, kind of aged like a fine wine, if you will?
God, that usually doesn't happen. I think shows hit their peak at around 5 seasons. After that, it gets very weird and wonky.
Community had the saying 6 seasons in a movie, though.
Yeah, I know. But once you get past 5, once you get to like 7, 8, 9, it just starts to become like a thing. It's like everything's duct taped together. It feels like. So I don't know. I can't really by that principle. I don't know if there's a show that's aged well where I'm like, season 2 was rough, but season 11, and again, those are two extremes. I'm sure like The Good Place, I think I'll use that as a good example because you find out like the big reveal in The Good Place happened into season 1, and they still were able to capitalize off the momentum and figure out what to do while keeping the integrity of the show consistent. So I think that was a show that kind of aged well. But again, that was 5 seasons. So yeah.
Bron, what about you? Any shows that you feel like made it better with time, but what about I think you make it even more broad, shows that maybe had Easter eggs, and so you kind of wanted to go back and see if you missed anything, especially past the series finale, which may have had a big twist in it.
Well, I think that a show that kind of really grew on me and one that I have gone back and rewatched would be BoJack Horseman, and maybe that doesn't end like on the most positive notes. Like I know like the last season was really hard to watch for me.
It is.
It was yeah.
If you're going through it can be a hard season to watch.
But I do think that is one of those shows where it just gets better and better with each season and doesn't lose the momentum, and they end it when they need to end it. And it makes this whole complete package of a thing where like they don't try to kind of beat the dead horse with seasons.
The view from halfway down, the funeral episode of BoJack is still one of the strongest episodes. Man, it's hard to go back and watch that series for that very reason. I think one that sticks out to me and I know I'm going to be
terrifying.
Yeah, I know, right?
Really. Like that, I got goosebumps for that. It was like, no, not really.
That's that poem was actually written by one of the show writers, and because I looked into it because I was like, it's such a strong poem, and and so the whole because I talked about it way too much after I watched it, like because me and Jessica, I would be like, do you even think about what he's saying? He's like, you jump and it's about the view from halfway down. Like once you get halfway, you're like, fuck that. Like I can feel the sun. Everything's awesome. I don't want to be on my way down, and so which is, I think, anyway, mental health, obviously, that show gets into some pretty dark things. And so, but I think that's what we applaud it for, right? Because I think it brings up topics that we all kind of think about, and it's through a horse and a cat, through comedy, right? Which, tragedy plus time is comedy, so. But a good ending can make or break a show's legacy. A bad season finale can cause the show to go on a trajectory that the fans completely hate. A bad series finale can make you go into the I'll never watch that shit again category. Kev, what is the best example of the worst season finale that you've ever seen?
I'm glad I got here first because it's obviously Game of Thrones. It's obviously Game of Thrones, and not only that was a bad season
popping off right now with Game of Thrones.
That was a bad season. Like not a bad. Like usually bad series finales. It's like it's either a mess season or it's like a good season with a terrible finale. This was just terrible. What was it? 6 episodes?
Yeah. All 6 episodes
like,
were bad.
And we're all living there like, what the fuck? Like, remember the coffee cup on the table? Like, it was just like they just said, fuck it. Like, let's just get to Star Wars. Let's get this over with.
And they had so much money, and they had the ability, they had the time, because HBO has said that they tried to offer more seasons, and the people were like, and they turned it down. Yeah, like, and so it's one of those,
because they wanted to work on Star Wars, which they don't even get to anymore. They didn't say why, but I'm assuming it had to do something with that fiasco that was Game of Thrones.
And I ask people all the time, we've been locked in our homes, and I've said it on this show, so I'll say it again. Yeah. We've been locked in our homes for a year now, and I have heard no one, literally no one. I've never heard anybody go, yeah, I'm rewatching Game of Thrones, which would be one of those shows to where if the season finale and everything had ended correctly, we would have all rewatched by now, because there are so many little tidbits, right? There's so many things that carry over into other seasons. And then they threw all continuity out in the last season, basically took a shit on the fans and said like, hey, we don't ever want you to rewatch this again.
Right. Unraveled everything. Like nothing was anything that was written and done in the show didn't matter. Jon Snow being half Targaryen didn't matter.
Who here has a better story than the guy who has no fucking story? Like, the Raven, get the fuck out of here! Like,
yeah, literally, like he was gone and just came back. It was like, I came all this way. What? Like, I don't know. But you know what though, and I have another theory. I think the reason why George R.R. Martin is taking so long is because I think he did write something like that. Because there was something where he always says, he was like, oh yeah, even though they're off the books, it's still very accurate to what I'm writing. Yeah. And then this shit drops out and he's like, oh no, I would never do something like that. And now it's taking,
we're just like shit.
Right. It's taking, we're in quarantine. Like no one's really been going. Like what's been taking so long, George?
You're right. He should have had that book done. He should have had.
That's what I'm saying. I think.
What about you, Braun? Any big examples stick out to you for the worst endings ever?
Yeah, I mean that's hard to kind of determine, especially because But I mean, a show that really disappointed me towards the end was The Office, just because I feel like they had a good place to end it, and then they're like keep coming out with things. I'm like, I really don't care about Andy being the boss like at all. Right. Like that whole season.
Yeah.
Really?
It was so bad that they had to bring James Spader, and I love James Spader.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm like you, and this kind of harkens back to what I was talking to before. Like obviously, The Office continually going on was an executive decision. Like they do that all the time, especially on network shows where like this is making too much money. We can't take it off the air. And we're gonna string this along, i.e., 90s babies. Remember this X-Files, that shit show.
They strung that along, dude. Right. When you kill off Mulder, and then
Mulder found out what happened to his sister. It went on for 4 seasons long after that. Even Mulder and Scully weren't the X-Files agents.
They weren't even the agents anymore. It's like that's when you know you've really started to shit the bed is whenever you've got different people playing because it was Scully and Mulder. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like that's
it
the
was.
two, and
Your
then you
whole
try to
reason
do
he
that.
joined the
They tried to
X-Files was
Scrubs it,
find
which
his
is
sister.
another one. Scrubs.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
That's another one that
yeah.
shit the bed. And I've seen a lot of people in chat talking about Sabrina because we do have the Sabrina graphic, which is another one that shit the bed. I would actually, I want to say Sabrina was a great show. Like it really was a good Netflix show. I
That's what
enjoyed
I've
the
heard.
witchiness of, of it. And even though I'm not a member of the Satanic Temple, I enjoy hearing Hell Satan on TV. And so it's one of those where like, it was a great show. And for them to kind of rush into that shit and the way it ended, it was gross. It was gross,
Yeah, it was.
to say the least.
And that wasn't even a long show either.
It wasn't. They literally, I think they did like 4 seasons and then they decided to like Netflix canned it. But it's one of those where it really goes to show too. I think they found out while in the season that this was going to be the last season. So they had to like pack a bunch of shit in there. And I feel bad for the creatives whenever something like that happens because they try to give you the experience that we want, which is a nice little bow on top, a good season finale. But they can't because they literally don't have the time to end the show the way they want to. We literally fought. Sabrina fought the toughest demon she had ever fought, and she beat one each episode. Something that would have usually took like seasons for her to do, they did in like one season, and we're just like, all right, she beat all the elder gods. Bye.
Yeah. It's hard, man. Hard
But
to
Scrubs is another one. And I am gonna say Community as well. I know like Community, we were talking about it earlier, but it's one that like starts so strong. Oh yeah, somebody in chat did say How I Met Your Mother. Also, I never got into How I Met Your Mother.
I've never seen that.
Yeah,
dude, it made no sense. She found spoiler alert. I'm sorry, but it's been like 6 years.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Spoiler.
It's been a while. Yeah,
he marries the mom, and then she dies. And then he goes back, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Dad, you told this entire story because you're obviously interested in Robin." What? That doesn't make sense.
Wait, and that's a show where the entire plot of the show is like building
about how he met their mother.
What's gonna happen? And who's the mother? I didn't watch the show that much, but like, is it someone you're satisfied with? Like you're
1000% satisfied. It made sense. So the last episode was like one of these weird. He met the mom, and then it goes into like a future of how they lived out their lives and all the characters and what they're up to and stuff. And then the show ends. It's like, and then I loved your mom and all the things he did right up into that moment until she got sick. And you're like, wait a minute, what? And even that season, right? So that whole season was about Barney and Robin getting married, which is big because if you know the show, Barney's a complete,
he's the player, right?
He's a womanizer.
He's a womanizer, right?
Neil Patrick Harris.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. He's a womanizer, and finally he met somebody who he could settle down with. And Robin, same with Robin, right? She was always just kind of like independent. She never wanted to be tied down or married or anything like that. And it was weird how these two kind of came together. And the whole season was about their marriage. And then literally in the beginning of the series finale, they get divorced.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's, I mean, there's, and I know I brought up Scrubs briefly, but I just feel like if anybody, it sucks whenever the first couple seasons of a show are so good. And Scrubs is one of those. You get so invested in the characters, and then you can really tell a show's about to really start to fall off whenever they start to try to replace integral characters. And I don't understand why Hollywood has not finally got it through their fucking skulls that like you can't replace main characters with some new character and then make us watch another 6 seasons of garbage. You know what I mean? Like they tried to replace literally the whole cast of
spinoff.
That 70 show was another one they tried to replace the whole cast essentially. Scrubs, they tried to do that shit. Like it's a lot of shows like that. X-Files, like you said earlier, and that's when you really know the show is about to just start heading straight downhill. Because we like it for the characters. Like you said, even your girlfriend, they're our friends, essentially. Right. I spent more time with Michael Scott than I did my own boss at some points in my life.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, and not getting the closure that you need is, it's super, super like a big disappointment when it comes to a lot of these shows. But anyway,